did you find there was a pressure of drinking in football whilst you were playing football?
I guess there was and there wasn't. You know, going back to when I was 17, 18 and first, you know, an apprenticeship or apprentice footballer. And we would all drink at weekends. That's what we did, right? After the games, we'd all go out and socialise. And you know what? At that stage of my life, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed every minute of it. I'm not going to say that I didn't. I think there was more pressure on some of the other lads, probably put by people like myself that maybe seemed to be leading the charge, let's say that much. But no, there wasn't any pressure outside of the usual Saturday night, let's go out, we've played hard, let's celebrate together. There certainly wasn't any pressure during the week to drink. And in fact, our lives were really very much about football and trying to be the best that we could be. And I think we inherently realised that alcohol, getting too, you know, drunk or whatever on a Saturday or a Sunday would affect how we performed on a Monday. And where I contrast that with the professional footballers I work with now, and I work with many professional footballers, everything's monitored. Their heart rates are monitored in everything they do. So you just can't even do it anymore. I mean, even if you wanted to, you couldn't get away with it.
Can't get away with it. Yeah.
The sports scientists will pick up in 5 minutes that your heart rate's elevated. They would know you're either sick or you're hungover. Simple as that, right? So that you're going to get found out in seconds. So the world has changed so much of sport, but back then there was mild pressure to fit in with the group, I guess, but I didn't find it excessive, was my experience.
And just tell us a little bit about your footballing career. Obviously, it was cut short earlier than you wanted it to be.
Yeah, so I signed with Leyton Orient when I was 10. I then went there as an apprentice, so I left school early at 16, and I loved school. It was, for me, it was A-levels and university and rugby. So my school was a rugby playing school. So we did Campion and Wingletown Lane. So I never kicked, I kicked the ball once for the school and then promptly got sent off. But we didn't really have a football team. We just had a rugby team. So all the footballers ended up being the rugby players. And I loved it. I loved rugby as a sport. And had I, you know, stayed with it, I think I could have achieved a decent level of rugby, let's say degrees. That was one path, or it was cut that short and go and follow the dream to become a footballer at 16, which I did. And I arrived in that man's world, which it was, right? Everyone's in competition at that stage, whether you're 16 or you're in the first team and you're 25. And realised really, really quickly I was miles behind. I was miles behind technically. I sort of had the heart of a lion, and rugby had definitely toughened me up, right? Rugby's a lot tougher sport than football. So I found that side of it, the physical side of it, easy. I was ahead on that side, the ability to run, the ability to, you know, be in that sort of physical part of the game. And that was very much my game. But technically I was miles behind. Like my dad described it brilliantly. He was like, you've got the heart of a lion, but the control and technique of Bambi on ice. And it's true. His other best line was, you couldn't trap a bag of cement. And it was that there was truth in that as well. So I had to really think a bit differently, act differently. I started to read books. I wouldn't say many young professional footballers at that stage were reading books, biographies, anything I could get my hand on. I had to figure this thing out. I started to train differently. I started to train when everyone else went home. I'd come back and go to my local park. I was technically a professional footballer, going over the local park with my brother, getting him to go in goal so I could practice. And then sort of against the odds, I did actually, make my way into first team, played first team football, scored in the Football League, which was my total dream, boyhood dream, one goal. Just when it was getting exciting, about sort of 19, really, I got an injury it was a nothing injury, but more or less finished my career at that stage.
What kind of injury was it?
It was just basically a torn cartilage, but naively, I didn't really tell anyone. I just kept playing. And I think this is, again, indicative of many athletes, right? You're just making progress. You don't want anyone to know. I don't want to get dropped. It was really naive on my part. And I played with that injury for a whole season, basically. So by the time I finally got it operated on, I'd then torn all the cartilage and then damaged all the bones. So I basically ended my own career, really. I mean, I limped along. I went out to Ireland. Loved it out there. At the time of my life, went and played football out in Ireland. But my sort of proper professional career was over. I couldn't train like I used to be able to train. I couldn't run, and that was my game. So I knew my playing days were limited. But that was then I stepped into a new arena, living out in Ireland with new social friends, and I fell in love with Ireland, and the drinking, let's say, was definitely a big part of my life over there than it was in the UK. Absolutely.
And that goes into, I suppose, your new your career after football is when you changed industry, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. So basically around 23, I think my playing days were over. That was it, finished, even though I'd say I limped around the Irish League for a little while, which was a beautiful experience, but football-wise, no, it was finished. And then I went into IT because I didn't know what else to do. Luckily, when I was at Coleraine, I fell into the job centre one day and just said, look, this is part-time football. I'm used to playing professional football. Like, what do I do in my days? Is there anything I can do? And they spoke about the University of Ulster, which was in Coleraine. I said, well, yeah, like what courses have they got? And luckily there was this HND in informatics. I remember it. And she went, but the course starts tomorrow, so you'll never get on the course. But look, let me just try anyway. I sort of half know the guy that runs it, a guy called Martin McKinney. She phones him up.
Of course you do.
Holds the phone. Yeah. She holds the phone and looks at me and says, oh, he said you played really well last night. I was like, yeah. She went, he says, go down and see him and he'll sort you out. So he's brilliant, a lovely, lovely man. Got me on this course. So I did this HND in informatics, which I loved for 2 years whilst playing football. That led me to Dublin, into the world of IT. It wasn't for me, I'll tell you that much. But it was a start into something. But I was lost, classic football loss. What do you do when you've had your meaning and purpose mapped out for you from the age of 10? And there was no advice. There was nothing, right? It's just this void. It's gone. The PFA, though, I will interject that because now I'm back with the PFA, training many of their top athletes as part of their business school. The PFA were brilliant to me around that time because I got in touch with them. I'd run up a little credit card bill, nothing substantial, but I thought I was going to get another contract. It didn't materialize. I wrote to the PFA. Someone recommended it. I think it was my PFA rep at the PFA, Professional Football Association. They wiped that credit card clear for me. No questions asked. And it wasn't a lot of money, but it was a lot
because you're
for
a
me
member
at
of the
time.
PFA.
Yeah, it made a huge difference to me. And I've never forgot it. And I've always vowed to give back. And now it's pretty cool that I get to tell that story now through the business school when I'm training some of the best athletes in the world at the moment, which is pretty cool. So I go on this IT journey.
Yeah.
That's not for me. I meet my now wife over in Ireland. We decide to go traveling, traveled the world for a few years, all over Australia, lived in Australia for a while, came back to the UK when I was 28. And I think that reason, that is an important number as well. But again, when I talk to the athletes, I often mention this. The average age of a professional football career is 27. So I didn't arrive back in London till I was 28, and I was still a bit lost, and we were just wandering, and I had the shirt on my back. That was it. So my professional career, in terms of the city career, didn't begin till 28, which is over the average age of most footballers. And that was the message I was trying to get across. You're just warming up at 28. A lot of these guys think that's it.
So
and girls now. Oh, that's it. My life's over. I'm never going to earn that money again. And it's that sort of doom and gloom, depression, bankruptcy, divorce. We see it so ubiquitous within sport, a massive accelerated rates over the general population, which is something I'm passionate about trying to combat. And then I started into the world of broking, only by fluke, again, because my brother happened to have become one of the biggest traders in the crude oil market at that stage for a company called BP. He got me a job basically on the floor, which is the guys in the bright jacket. And so began this new career in the world of broking, which I love.
You loved it. I mean, tell me a little bit about, I wouldn't know where to begin. So, can you explain, just in a few seconds, what is it? What are you, is it trading in some way?
It sort of looks a bit like trading. People get a bit confused between the two things. So it's the guys in the pits, the bright jackets, and they're screaming and shouting at one another. That's the best place to describe it. And I spent some time down there before going upstairs. But really what we do is we are middle men and women between a buyer and seller of futures. And that could be, in this instance, it was futures, i.e. a future deliverable of oil. So it's known as paper. So you don't get the physical oil. You'd get this derivative of, which is something that fluctuates with price that you can make or lose money on, or you can hedge your oil exposure. If you're a big oil producer, or if you're a bank, you can take the other side of that bet. Or if you're a hedge fund, you can just trade around it. Individuals can trade around it. So we're middlemen and women. Basically, we're putting buyers and sellers together all day long is what we do. And I loved it. It was electric. It was fast paced. There was even the odd sending off in the truth of it. It reminded me of football in many ways. And it was a lot of lads that you had to be tough. It's a tough environment. Right, yeah. And for me as a ginger footballer who wasn't very good, let's just say I'd had my fair share of abuse from home and away fans over the years. So I'd quite thick skin. Handle it. Yeah, exactly. Going into that environment. And I say this to our athletes all the time. The skills that I learn as a professional footballer are the same skills that have served me my entire life. All the best lessons I learned was in that footballing arena. It served me in every single career since, because it's the same skills you need. You need that resilience. You need a bit of a thick skin. You need to be able to bounce back. You need discipline. You need teamwork. These are all the things. Exactly. Disappointment, the ability to bounce back. They're all the things that employers are looking for, because they are those core skills, I think, of achieving anything in either the business world, entrepreneurial world, or in life in general. So I excelled in that environment really quickly. Fast forward 10 years, I'd grown a big broking franchise, had offices in Singapore, Houston, New York, London. And I'd sort of made it, I guess, by that technical yardstick of income that we would often measure ourselves by. But I had one of those, I guess, epiphany moments of mid to late 30s thinking, is this it? Is this it? I've got the car, got the house, got all the stuff that I thought I needed, but I actually wasn't happy. I was 3 stone, 42 pounds heavier than I am now. I hadn't exercised properly in probably the best part of 15 years, drinking too much, stressed out all the time, maxed out all the time, no time for my loved ones. Life just felt a bit dull, a bit grey, in truth. Yet the conventional wisdom would have told me I should have been blissfully happy at that stage, only I wasn't. So it was a bit of a wake-up call in many ways for me to sort of take stock and really reflect and review where my life was heading. And in that evaluation, I looked around at those other brokers more successful than me, and I just saw more of the same. Broken bodies, broken minds, estranged families, all the things that I didn't aspire to. So I quit. I quit that job, with the view to maybe, run off and find myself. But then I thought, no, I'm going to double back and stay in that industry, but I'm going to come back and do it in my own way, in a healthy way that's good for me and good for the people that come and work with me. And that's exactly what I did. And that's kickstarted this whole new adventure then.
Yeah, I mean, so I want to get on to the OneYearNoBeer, the Dryy app. I want to get onto that because I think that has its own special little bubble to talk about. But what I do find interesting is that when you became a broker, and then, the whole point of starting a business is you want to you find a problem and you want to create a solution, don't you? And I think is it Seneca, the name of your is it almost like a brokerage consulting company?
Yeah, I sort of do a lot under various businesses and umbrellas, but some of it is consulting at brokers at a high level. Then I go out and work for the likes of the PFA and lecture there, which I love. I train coaches. The big thing really what I do is train executive coaches, because that's what changed my life. I didn't put that bit into the story, but 12 years ago, I trained with a guy called John Grinder, who's the co-founder of NLP, because around that epiphany moment where I sort of stopped the story, as it were, I trained as an executive coach, really to understand how my own brain worked, really to think about what I wanted to do with my life and how I was going to do broking very differently. And that kickstarted this whole new world of coaching. I coached all of our staff. I then coached people outside of that arena, which naturally, without me trying, led me to consultancy and coaching and training, and then training coaches myself so I could pass that baton on some 12 years later, which again has just tiptoed me into all these different entrepreneurial businesses and ideas and concepts that I'm involved in, of which OneYearNoBeer is in that story, as is Dryy.
Well, what I like about the idea am I correct in saying that you now kind of go into brokerages and train them of how to create a kind of healthy lifestyle for their staff?
Yeah,
that
that's one of
correct?
the things that I do. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm working with an incredible brokerage right now, and I've worked with lots of really forward-thinking teams and businesses that are starting to figure this out, because it just wasn't a thing before, right? Had I tried to introduce this 5 years ago, no one gets it. They're like, what are you talking about? We pay our guys and girls enough money, they can figure this stuff out for themselves. But then I would contrast it continually with my experience in football. And right now I'm working with some of these great athletes. They've got so much support around them now. They've got their sports scientists, they've got their coaches, they've got their masseurs, they've got physios, they've got psychologists, they've got all of this incredible support. And why is that? Because the big business of sport, which is big business, figured this out, and it always leads the way. Sport always leads the way in elite performance, and the business world then catches up.
Yeah.
Big sport has realized our players, or our staff, actually, when their well-being, when their health, physical and mental, is optimal, they're much more likely to perform better. And if they perform better, what does that mean to us as a big business? We generate more income. So I think it's led them down a path to take care of all these elements. They could, in theory, have said, well, we pay our footballers loads of money. They can go and do their own strength and conditioning.
Sure.
They can go and figure out their own psychology. We pay them enough money. That's the sort of approach that's been in the business world, where sport went, no, let's take care of everything. And that's what I'm trying to bring in, that mindset, that mentality to these elite. And I've started at the elite end because that's where I spent a lot of time, i.e. broking, trading, because there's the income to support individuals, and there's certain individuals within those firms that generate significant revenue. And I would argue the big business of broking, the big business of trading, is bigger than football, because the brokers have much longer careers and they're capable of consistently generating extreme amounts of money. Therefore, why not treat them like athletes? Why not bring in mindset coaches like myself? I also go into the firm. I bring a guy called Christian Daly in, who's another ex-professional footballer, captain of West Ham, captain of Scotland. He's a brilliant
Scottish player.
Sports, and conditioning. He's a genius at what he does. So he does the physical side of things. I do the mental side of things. We go into these firms. I train them in resilience and using their brain in a completely different way they've never had any experience of before, because they just never received any training. There's like zero training, zip. In most of these organizations, you get given the job and it pays well enough and you get on with it and you learn on the job. For me, that's completely the wrong approach. And too many brokers end up broken mentally, physically, like the footballers often do. So I'm really passionate about it. So some really forward-thinking organizations bring us in. We build gyms. We've built a gym in one of the offices where we were, next to their broking floor, so they can literally walk from the broking floor into the gym, do some reps, and if the phone rings, they can probably still hear it from the gym that they're in. So we're trying to revolutionize the way that we think about performance, and it's the right thing to do, because positive psychology, where I went and got my master's degree in, tells us consistently, the higher your well-being, the higher your performance. Like, what we haven't understood for so long is we think, when people perform well, then they'll be happy. But the barrier to them performing well very often is the fact that they're not particularly happy.
Just talking there about that, you went back to study, you went back to do a master's, and this leads into the PFA Business School. How, it's obviously really important for athletes they have to kind of relearn, don't they, what not that they never learned in the first place, but they might have been at a football club since the age of 8 or 9 now with their kids, and they might just passively have studies to do, but they're not really involved in it like they want to be, as in football. How have you found it with the PFA Business School? Our players, do they want to kind of start learning? I suppose they're good learners anyway, because they have to learn on the pitch every day from coaches and teammates.
Absolutely. I think, there's some conventional thinking in the world of sport, isn't it? That you can only be involved in, be immersed in your particular sport, and anything outside of that is a distraction. And I think that's been the conventional cultural wisdom in sport for far too long. But here's the problem with that. When we are just, and I use that title with our brokers, just a broker, just a professional footballer, just an athlete, the emotional roller coaster. The emotional roller coaster is 10 times more violent, because then every mistimed tackle, every time that you get dropped, every time that you're injured, it feels like you as an individual are defined by that role. Therefore, you feel 10 times worse. The stress is compounded. Whereas when you realize you're bigger than just your chosen sport, which I think is really important, right? Many of these men and women will be brothers and sisters, parents, partners, whatever their setup is. Those roles are way bigger than their roles as an athlete or a broker. And it's reconnecting with some of that, I think, that's really powerful. And then when we start to do that, you realize there's room, because there's a lot of time available when you're playing professional sport in particular, to study, to grow outside of your chosen sport. And I'll give you a real world example of this. It's a great guy called Connor Chaplin, who started training with us about 2 years ago.
Oh, yeah. Pompey player,
he was at Pompey. He's now
ex-Pompey
Ipswich.
player. He's at Ipswich now, yeah.
That's right. And he started training with us. So I'm also involved in another business called the Empower Sports Education Academy, where we take, again, footballers, predominantly professional athletes, and get them ready for their careers after their playing days, even though they're still playing, which I think is a really skillful thing to do. Connor came along amongst many other great athletes. That season, he decided with us, through the exploratory tools that we took him through, that he was going to go back and study psychology. Interested in psychology, interested in lots of different things. Went back to start studying psychology. Now you might argue, well, he's going to be distracted because now he's studying psychology and he's thinking about his career, whilst he's still playing. That year, Connor won the PFA Footballers of the Year for the
he's smashing it at Ipswich,
Division 1. They got promoted. This year, look at Ipswich right now.
They top the league.
Yeah, look, favourites to come into the Premiership. That's 2 divisions in 2 years. Yet one
Amazing.
of their star players, who's been the absolute star player, came to us, and now he's studying. This is the point. It's that conventional wisdom that holds too many sports people back, which we're trying to break down, because they're hungry for it. And if you think about it, right, there's barely a sports person in the land that won't need a second career. Like they all will, 100%, right? Because it's very rare. Okay, there are some sports that you can do masters, i.e. like golfing and whatnot, that might keep the income coming potentially. But by and large, most athletes will need a second career. Even the Premiership guys that earn an absolute fortune, they still end up bankrupt. Most of them. That is what the stats service will need a second career.
For example, he played at a top level for years and years for West Ham. Scotland, he played there for years, and he still knows, I need to keep going after my football career finishes.
Totally. And you can't, what I'm saying, like irrelevant of income, let's just say you've got enough money to get you by and you've made some good investments, which some do, some don't. You can't sit on your ass doing nothing. Like we are meaning-seeking creatures. We need to show up and contribute. You can't sit around playing Xbox or even golf do you know what I mean? It's not going to light you up. And you think you're 28 years old or 30 years old, you might have another 70 years left on this planet.
Yeah.
So my point being, it doesn't matter who you are or where you are, you're going to need another career. So the sooner you start thinking about this stuff, the better, but not in a negative way. I'm trying to plan for this thing because I don't believe that I'm going to be successful. In a really positive way, this will make me more successful. You see some of the greatest athletes,
another string to the bow,
so well-rounded. Exactly. And that's the big point. So what I've seen through the PFA Business School, and I've probably trained about 100 different footballers at this stage, again, past and present, every single league, from the real international heroes to Division 3, and they're all hungry for it, right? But here's a big thing. I feel quite sad for many of our athletes, which is a really strange thing that's come over me in the last few years, where most people would dream of being that person they see on the pitch or on the track. I'm actually becoming a bit sad for so many of these athletes because they are lost. When their career comes to an end, they are lost. Mentally, physically lost. They don't really get any support. Everyone disappears. That fan base is quick to forget. And they're just sort of left as
agents
this,
potentially.
Once were a hero. Yeah, the agents disappear, right? Like lightning. We see that a lot. And actually, what I'm trying to do, or we're trying to do, is get them really excited about their life after sport. In fact, their life after sport could be 10 times more rewarding, 10 times more meaningful, and 10 times more economical with a bit of skill, as opposed to, that's it, I give up. What's the point? I'm never going to earn that kind of money again. My life's over. I'm never going to reach those highs. Yes, you can. You can just reach it in different ways, more meaningful ways. That's the big message, really, I'm trying to get across.
And so obviously the work you've been doing with the PFE Business School, when did you contact them? Did they contact you? How did that come around?
A bit of a mixture because of the work I was doing for the Empower Sports Education Academy. We were already doing something similar, and the business school was only just started this year. So we were sort of ahead of the game, as it were.
Alejandro.
Yeah, Alejandro, who's a great guy. So we were talking to them about what we were already doing because there wasn't a thing, and they were very much, look, we're about to start this. You'd be perfect for it. Why don't you come in and be a part of the business school as well? So it's one of those nice organic things, but which has been a blessing for me, again, because I get to now go into that environment, give back, share my story, get them excited about their learning, talk about growth mindset, all those great things, and get them in that state of, this is an exciting adventure. This is a learning adventure that
sure,
could lead me into
it's
this
not
place
studies, it's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you talk a lot about, I read on LinkedIn that you said about network is your net worth. And it's something I've come to really realize is that you do have to get out there. You have to get out of this kind of safe zone, don't you? And maybe as footballers, you live in this bubble. Any athletes as well, but especially footballers, you might live in this bubble, and getting out into your network to really create contacts, isn't it?
Yeah, and that was something that frustrates me. So having had that unique experience of being a footballer, achieving a relative amount of success in the professional business world, and then stepping into entrepreneurship, I've had this nice broad brush at most careers. And what I found in entrepreneurship that didn't exist in professional business and didn't really exist in sport was this networking. It's brilliant in entrepreneurship. You can book yourself on a mastermind. You can get you have to pay for these things, and rightly so, but you get in a room with these incredible entrepreneurs and you learn from these entrepreneurs that are doing the very thing that you want to do at a much higher level, and it just accelerates your learning. I don't see that in business, and I certainly don't see it in sport. And for me, that was a frustration because most of these athletes, especially in the football arena, are very working class lads and lasses, right? Guys and girls. What happens is they've been playing life at this elite level, surrounded by elite people at what they do. Let's just say they get injured or their career comes to an end, right? And it's over very quickly, very often through injury or very quickly through retirement. And of course, their network starts to disappear around their eyes. Sure. And then what happens to most of those guys and girls? I think they revert to their old network. And it might be that their old original network, very much like mine, I grew up in Dagenham, their old original network might not be playing life at the same level they want to play at. And Jim Rohn talks about this. We become the average of the 5 people we spend most time with. And you don't know what you don't know. So most of these guys and girls, I've got no idea at the opportunity that is waiting for them. No idea, because they don't know what they don't know. And they might not organically have the network. You heard me in my story. I was lucky that my brother had done all the hard work and got himself into this arena and excelled. And then because of that, brought me into that network. That was lucky for me. So my big belief is that athletes, footballers should actually stick together. There's an incredible network, and your network is your net worth, of talented individuals, former, past footballers, athletes that have gone on to achieve incredible things in the world of business, incredible things in the world of entrepreneurship. Why are we not sharing that? Why are we not getting in a room with people that are coming towards their retirement age, or they have to retire? Get in a room with people that you admire and you trust because they've been in your shoes, that are achieving things that you might never have even known was possible, such as stepping back into the traditional business world of broking or trading, reinsurance, sales, whatever that looks like, or starting entrepreneurial ideas, or starting charities, starting funds if you're maybe at that top level and you've got disposable income and you don't need to work, essentially. Why are we not getting these in big mastermind groups that they can learn from? And that was something that just doesn't really exist in football. So we are working on that right now. It's a big thing that we're working on to try and create this network, because your network is your net worth, effectively.
And do you think it's specifically a football problem? Do you think other sports are better at it than football?
I don't think so. Not that I've seen. I might be wrong, but I have not seen, from rugby, cricket, it feels like it's the same problem for them all. i.e. these guys and girls go through the system, then they bail out at some point, and that could be 18, or that
They've
could
been
be
in a
at,
bubble. Yeah.
38, and then they're gone. And then it's like, where's everyone else? I don't know. We're just sort of scattered around, just trying to sort of get by as best we can, as opposed to let's put a proper system in place. Let's bring them through this transitional system, almost to get them really excited about their future career. Let's look at all the things you could do. Let's bring in some people that you know and admire that have already achieved success in that area. How did they do it? What can you learn from them? For me, that's just like basic, but really important.
But and obviously, the athlete has an ability because of their profile to get their foot in the door that other people don't, do they? So it's such a great opportunity for them to take advantage of that networking. They just have to have that confidence.
And that's what it is. It's mindset, and it's hard because you think, let's just say you've been an athlete at the top of your game, and then you've got to start again, effectively. You've got to knock on the door of a business or an entrepreneur and say, hi, like my name's so-and-so, and they might know exactly who you are. And you're almost saying, I've got to start again. I've got to start at the bottom. You can imagine the mindset around that. People then talk themselves out of it because they don't want to look silly. They don't want to look small. They've been used to this certain type of stature. So a lot of the work that we do, exactly, is actually getting them in the frame of mind that everything is learning. There's no such thing as failure. So we talk about growth mindset a lot. I touched on that earlier, right? Every master was once a disaster. You've achieved mastery in one area of your life. Now you've got lots of time to achieve mastery in other areas of your life, but you might need to start towards the bottom to build your way up. But it's the same set of skills, but you can't get there if you don't start. You can't get there if you hide and you run away and you want to stay small in your comfort bubble, which might be your particular chosen sport, rather than having the courage to get outside of it and learn through failure and setbacks, just like you did with football or just like you did in your athletic career. That's the secret to it. So this is part of the problem. That work needs to be done as well, right? We need to get right into the sort of the psyche and the mind of our athletes and train them mentally to step into these new arenas, because without that training, I think too many of them are fearful of looking silly or failing. So they stay small, they stay stuck, and then they stay stuck in that bubble that doesn't serve them anymore. The work is not there. And then they perform many of these stats that we see.
And I suppose when the footballers do this course, the girls and boys will pass this information down to former teammates and go, "This was great. I learned so much. You should, they're going to pass this opportunity down to friends and say, no, don't look at it as a football's finishings. Look at it as this is a brand new start."
Absolutely. And I think having been in that football bubble, of course, it's difficult, right? Because you'll want to play for England and you'll want to play in the Premiership and you can't see past football. You're so in that bubble. So it's hard to sort of lift your head up a little bit and think, actually, at some point, this is going to end. No one's really thinking about that often until it's too late or until it's been taken away from them.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of work needs to be done. And that's my point around changing the culture, really, of this is the one thing that you're going to do for the rest of your life. No, it isn't. You're going to do it for a very short period of time. Go and enjoy every blooming second of it, but also be skillful enough. Yeah. And also be skillful enough to realize that actually at the end of this, you've just set the most unbelievable platform up for yourself in terms of your stature, in terms of your credibility, in terms of your discipline, your mindset. Let's leverage that into this next career, whatever that looks like for you. Let's get prepared way in advance. I mean, some of the guys we coach and train are like early 20s. That's the sort of level that I think
that's amazing.
Doing this at. Yeah.
I'm so happy for Connor if that works out, because I'm a Pompey fan myself and I remember him making his debut. So I'm really delighted that he's doing so well at Ipswich, but also he's clearly intelligent enough to see, I'm going to do something after as well that's going to, and maybe it won't be down the lines of psychology, but it was just the fact that he's taken some kind of course. He'll know I can do it again in a different field, or I can get involved in a different sector.
Absolutely. And I also do it with a guy called Mark Kelly, who you might know from Pompey. He is the owner of Empower Sports, the education part of it, which is really cool. He was another
played for
company
Ireland
legend. Yeah, whose career was ended age 17. He was tipped
by
to
injury.
be the next George Best. I mean, massive career. Tim
They said
Breaker
George
basically
Best,
chopped him in half on the AstroTurf, and that was the end of his like career, which had so much potential. So he's been passionate about this area for a long while. Hence, me and him played together at one point. So yeah, we were great friends, and
in Ireland.
I got involved in that. Yeah, which was lovely.
So just changing tack. I wanted to ask about the actual feedback so far from the PFA Business School, because you haven't been there. It hasn't been going that long, has it? It's quite a new venture by the PFA. What's been the feedback so far?
I think the feedback's been, it should have been in football 20 years ago, is the feedback. Maheta has come in now as the new CEO of the PFA, and he's shaking things up, and rightly so. You know, I think there's been a lot of criticism from within football that it felt like not enough was being done. And it really feels like these things are starting to happen now. And I think the business school is a brilliant sign of that. And you see the athletes in there that they're loving it. You know, and what's important for them, again, they can step into this environment and be surrounded by people they know, like, and trust. You know, because it is still a bit of a football bubble, which I think eases them into it, rather than having to go to the local night school or university whilst they're playing, and it just makes it a bit more awkward and a bit more messy. So for these guys, this sort of safe environment, safe arena to learn and like be vulnerable to learn, I think it's an incredible thing. It's only going to grow from strength to strength. It's a brilliant initiative.
So I just want to talk a bit about the after your brokerage career, or during that, you decided you wanted to change your lifestyle, and this went on to OneYearNoBeer and the Dryy app, and you're a alcohol-free advocate, shall we say? Can you just tell us a little bit about how that came around?
Yeah, it was part of that epiphany moment where, you know, I quit the job to set up the new brokerage, and in that space traveled the world, trained with some of the great thinkers of well-being. None of them mentioned alcohol, by the way. They mentioned everything else. So I experimented with fitness and meditation and nutrition, and none of these things would stick because I was consistently inconsistent because of alcohol. You know, whether that was a couple of drinks a week, a few more at the weekend. You know, I defined myself as a middle lane drinker. Was I drinking too much? Absolutely. But who isn't, you know, in those environments? So actually the last thing I decided to look at was alcohol. But when I removed it, it was just rocket fuel. It was like I'd had kryptonite in my backpack for the last 20 years and I'd just taken it out. It was just this like rush of euphoria, time, energy, consistency. And then that consistency fed back into what I just learned around nutrition and movement and meditation. So I just started to optimize everything. Lost 3 stone, 42 pounds in weight. Resting heart rate went from 68 to 42. Looked like a different person, felt like a different person. Relationships were better than ever. People said to me my broking career would probably be finished if I didn't go out and drink and entertain. But I didn't care. I just did not care what they thought. And I also realized that my broking business, I believed, would fail unless I was on point all the time. As a new business and the head of that new business, I couldn't take 2 or 3 days off due to underperformance, due to the sort of sluggishness and tiredness and couldn't quite be arsedness that was alcohol. So I removed it in the face of an industry that thought this is never going to work. And actually it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Best thing that ever happened to me personally, professionally. That business, we grew it 7 times bigger in half the time, up against the titans of the broken world. We were unheard of. Within 2 or 3 years, we were neck and neck number one in the space, which something I'm super proud of. And I know for me, that is all down to one thing as the Kickstarter to all of that was removing alcohol. Had I still been drinking, I don't reckon that business even exists, let alone still as a very successful business right now. I stepped down from it in 2019. But that led me to this beautiful realization that there's probably millions and millions of people that were like me, middle lane drinkers, that actually they weren't in that problematic stage. So they weren't like completely aware of how alcohol was affecting them, but it was affecting them, their performance. Maybe they were inconsistent, all the things I spoke about. I had anxiety. that was really starting to show up in my life. For me, that was 100% down to alcohol. As soon as I removed alcohol, that went. How many people are suffering in these kinds of ways that are middle lane drinkers? Maybe I could inspire one or two. So I wrote a little ebook based on a rhyme that I'd created, which was OneYearNoBeer. And the reason I created that rhyme, because I basically had to pretend that I was on this challenge that I made up in the early days of stopping drinking to get clients off my back a little bit and mates off my back, just to go, look, I'm doing this thing. It's like OneYearNoBeer.
Okay,
just leave me alone for a while. Just let me do it, because otherwise they were just
that's
on
the
me,
pressure, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's massive pressure. It is the only drug in the world. When you try and stop it, you get absolutely slaughtered by many people, which is ridiculous when you think about it. Although that is changing. Yeah, absolutely. But it is changing. You know, I've been at this for 10 years. So I've seen it when no one really understood it 10 years ago to really in the last 3 years, it's really starting to change with the advent of alcohol-free alternatives. But that little book got picked up by Pan Macmillan, one of the world's biggest publishers, to write a proper book, one of those real books, which we did, the 28-day alcohol-free challenge. That kickstarted the OneYearNoBeer movement. And then that led me, I stepped down from there in 2019 because I wanted to explore lots of other angles and opportunities, hence all the work I do in the brokerages now, but also to start another movement called Dryy, Dryy. It's got an extra Y. It's an app and online, offline, alcohol-free community training platform. I absolutely love it. It's full of incredible people. And collectively between those two initiatives, we've inspired hundreds of thousands, if not quite comfortably into the millions now, to transform their relationship with alcohol, and something I'll be forever grateful for and proud of to be a part of that. And I'm still immersed in that world right now as a mentor, as an investor, as a trainer, as a coach, because I'm trying to really help the next wave of great alcohol-free initiatives and businesses come through to help transform this landscape. And on that note, I'm also in the process of making a documentary, which is really exciting.
Oh, great.
So that's going to be a big project for 2024 with a plan to launch that in Jan 2025. And that's going to all be about like a game changers. If anyone's watched that documentary on nutrition,
absolutely,
like a game changers for alcohol free is the plan. So
is Rich
on the
in
big
it?
Screen. He will be, yes.
Oh, great, lovely.
Yeah, which is cool.
Oh, that's amazing, Andy. I mean, that's really exciting. I mean, if you didn't shout from the rooftops about how an alcohol-free lifestyle, you'd just be one, denying it to a lot of people, but also you'd be lying, wouldn't you? I mean, why wouldn't you tell everyone that it's the best thing that you've done?
Yeah, and I think hopefully that's what I've managed to do skillfully. I just invariably share my story. So it's not finger wagging, you should do this, telling people off. It's like, I did this and I've got all these unbelievable results. And now I've seen hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions, do the exact same thing and get the exact same kind of results. There's got to be something in that. You know, why not just take a break and experience it for yourself with the right mindset, i.e. you're not giving something up, you're gaining all these advantages. And I think in doing so, it just continually inspires people, which is just, I think it's a wonderful thing. I think humans, meaning and purpose lives inside giving back, contributing, service of others. So for me, what entrepreneurship did then, as well alongside my broking firm, was just giving this lovely meaning and purpose in my life, which it does. You know, I'll be forever grateful to my alcohol-free adventure and then all the wonderful adventures that have spun out the back of that. And it continues. Like I say, I'm going back out to LA in March. We're starting to record the documentary all through 2024. Like all these lovely things are happening, right? I'm just going along for the ride, enjoying life. And
that all started with an ebook.
Exactly. Putting it out into the world with no big plans, no intention of doing anything with it. Same when I trained as an executive coach. I didn't plan on becoming this sort of super duper coach that goes into all these organizations and the PFA and all those things. It just I just did it because I was interested, and now, you know, here I am. And, you know, I walked away from broking, which is pretty cool to be able to do. Not many people are in the position to walk away from it. I walked away from it in around 2019. And now I run my own businesses. I can do what I do from anywhere in the world. And yeah, I feel very grateful for this adventure.
And just really quickly about alcohol in sport. I just wanted to, have you noticed that there's still a kind of issue with alcohol with professional athletes? Has any athletes come to you about the kind of abstinence from alcohol, or do you think it's improved a little bit? Do you think it's compared to what it used to be, kind of 80s and 90s?
It's improved a lot, but sports are different. I think football is dramatically improved. I think it's not a thing
Really?
in football really like it used to be in a big way. Sports like cricket, still a lot of drinking cricket because there's a lot of downtime in cricket. I think we see a bit more, but I think in general, sports people are working this stuff out. And as mentioned, with the technology and tracking heart rates, you can't game the system.
True,
It will be so obvious if you've been out after training and gone for a few drinks and then the next day your heart rate's suddenly elevated. Sports scientists are going to see that a mile off. And like I said, that either means you've been drinking or you're unwell, one or the other. And one or the other might mean that you can't train, right? And no one wants to not be able to train, especially if they've been drinking. And you're going to get found out now, right? So there's that added pressure. So it's just not. No, it's changing dramatically, which is brilliant to see, in my opinion. Because I think what can happen is the fans on the terrace look up and idolize, their sporting heroes. And if you think back to, the 80s and 70s, 80s, probably early 90s, those heroes were falling out of nightclubs. They were giving it the old Merson drinking chant, and then all of those fans, the millions of fans, assume, oh, my heroes are all going out boozing. You don't see that anymore, do you? You don't see that. And I think the fans are starting to work out. I was at West Ham at the weekend. My brothers, we have season tickets over West Ham. I had my 0-0 over there. I loved it. Still felt part of the lads. They had a few drinks and I had a few 0-0s. It's a beautiful thing. Football's a beautiful thing. So I think it's starting to change rapidly now, which is really exciting.
Great. Andy, where can people find you? I want to say thank you as well for spending time today. I know you're a super busy guy. Where can people get hold of you? Where can we find more information about you and your ventures?
Yeah, so on LinkedIn, I'm doing a lot more on there as Andy Ramage, Ramage. Facebook, Instagram, Andy Ramage Official. On my website, Andy Ramage. There's loads of free resources on there if you want to come and train with me to become a coach. In 2024, I'm training another wave of executive coaches, which I'm really excited about.
Loads of stuff on your website, actually. Journaling, that's really great.
Yeah, there's my journaling system. It's free to download on there. If you want to take a break from alcohol, there's some free stuff around that. And of course, the Dryy app as well, Dryy, wherever you get your apps from. That's our alcohol-free space. I'm in there live on a Tuesday and a Friday with a bit of training. It's all free. It's a really, really wonderful thing. So yeah, in all those, but basically I'm somewhere every day. You can't miss me.
You're somewhere.
Have a little look. Yeah.